Because I'm thinking like 10 minutes a day. What is something that works for most people that they can do in 10 minutes a day?
I would say that is anything in the realm of connections. I guarantee you have something on your to-do list that you have been moving daily, weekly, maybe even for over a month that's been like, I need to connect with X person. It's a person that that you just need to send an email to about an opportunity. Maybe they're a former client, maybe they're a potential affiliate partner, maybe they're a potential sponsor. Something is there. And those kinds of things make huge impact.
Welcome back to another episode of the Art of Online Business. And if you can see us, then you realize my wife is here again as co-host.
Hello.
Hello. And Kelly Sinclair is on the other side of the screen, or for you, literally the right side of the screen, as our guest today, coming back for the second episode. And what that means, if you didn't see the first episode, is that Kelly was hanging out with us in the beginning on the previous episode, which is linked below, where she shared just snapshots of her business journey. And speaking of business journey, she is your fairy brand mother, waving the magic wand to give you the confidence, guidance, and support that you need to attract an audience of ideal buyers to get to your next level of success. That would make her the CEO of KS and Co. She's the host of a podcast called Entrepreneur School, which is an education hub for ambitious women who want to start and grow their own brands. And you're an award-winning marketer and brand strategist, visibility coach, girl mom of two, and juggling hockey practices and marketing plans. I had the pleasure of meeting you in real life, Kelly, and hanging out with you in this previous episode. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm pumped that there's 2 episodes. There's like the get to know me and that kind of chat, and then this one where we can dive deep into the strategy side of things, which is fun. And I love to talk all things visibility, getting yourself out there, even when you don't want to, and how you can do it in honestly 10 minutes a day or less.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see how we can
Yeah.
improve our visibility. We're doing that right now. So I'm going to be taking mental notes or just have my VA come back and make like an action plan based on your 10-minute a day visibility method. Before you jump into that, Jamie's the new co-host. And I feel like I say this all the time, but I know that like you might not have heard the other episodes, but she's been managing Facebook ads alongside of me in the business for a moment now, about half a year. And she brings a fresh perspective to the podcast, having learned ads management, some from me, some from other wise Facebook ad managers. And
I've learned a lot from you too.
You've learned a lot from you too, right?
Yes.
As you work like in the adjacent room, like, QUAY.jo, come in here, tell me about this. No.
Hollering from the next room, I have a question.
I have a question. No, but you've gotten good results for your clients, and I'm happy to have you as a co-host on the podcast. It's I value the perspective that she brings. It's a fresh perspective. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Let's get started. Tell us about this. Before you tell us about your framework, Kelly, can you please tell us, how did you develop this framework?
Oh, I love that question. So visibility has always really been my thing as someone with a background in PR and marketing for very different types of businesses. And of course, when you start your own business, you then have to also do that for yourself. And so doing it for clients is one thing, but getting myself to do it and figuring out like how to get myself the visibility that I want and kind of create this whole like, I'll do it and then I'll teach you how I do it kind of methodology. I actually started officially, I would say, challenging myself to very strategic, intentional visibility in the summer of 2023, because it was the first summer that I did not register my kids for a whole bunch of summer camps. So I knew they were going to be home a lot. And I live in Canada, so summer is like the only time it's really nice here. And so I wanted to take advantage of that. I bought a paddleboard. I wanted to get out on the mountain lakes and yeah, play in the water, get on my mountain bike, do those kinds of things. And I also knew that if all I did was have fun, then September was going to happen and I was going to be like, oh, starting from scratch, right? So I did not like the idea of that, even though I definitely wanted to reduce my workload in the summer, spend more time with my kids, play on my paddleboard, do that kind of stuff. I still knew that I had to keep like creating relationships, building collaborations, and finding ways to get in front of more people and grow an audience. And so that's when I started kind of challenging myself to visibility. And one of the first things I did, being that I'm a PR trained person, is I did a pitch to the local media about my podcast. It was fairly new at the time, and I wanted more people to know about it and to know about this resource where they could go and learn things about growing a business. And so I got all this media coverage, like radio show, 2 online articles in the printed paper with a front page mention on that printed paper, which was like
They
Nice.
still have
pretty.
printed.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a weekly
Wow.
paper. It's like it comes out once a week. It's yep.
Wow. Cool.
I live in like a semi-rural community. Anyhow, so that was amazing. And because that was the first thing that happened, it just sent this snowball into effect, basically. Like this ripple effect started happening. All of a sudden, after that, my podcast, and you know this as podcast hosts, you get pitches all the time, even at the time when my podcast was like non-existent and people didn't know about it, I was still getting all these pitches. But then all of a sudden that elevated and I got pitched this guest who at first I was like, I don't know. Then I checked this person out and he was like personally working with Ed Milet. He's like owns a helicopter, kind of money rich. And I was like, he just sold out a 7,000 person stadium for like a multi-day event with like um I don't know who else was there, like Russell Brunson, like big names. I'm like, okay, I'll talk to this guy because like I'm sure you've got something good to talk about. So I had him on the podcast and it was a really awesome discussion. And I like just felt really fired up from having had that conversation because he also was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna go be on the Joe Rogan show next." I was like, That's pretty much the same." And anyways, after that, it just was like, okay, now I've got this case study of some stuff that I did for my podcast, and I pitched myself a speaking opportunity, and I ended up in Nashville in April. And so I'm saying this because this is like July all the way through to April, and I'm speaking at the Moms in Podcasting conference in real life
This was
because
back
of
in 2023 or this
yeah,
past year?
yeah, it was
Okay.
just this past April. So
Oh.
so basically, what I'm saying is that like the one action led to another thing, led to a ripple effect, led to me going to Nashville, led to me meeting people who I met in Nashville. Like Holly Haynes is one of the people who's been on your podcast. Allison Hardy is already a friend of mine too. And just like how all these things connect. And so you're asking about how I created my visibility like framework. I started doing it. I started doing it and I started seeing the impact of taking one small visibility action each day. And so that means like the only thing that I did to define what that looked like was that somebody else needed to know about it. So it couldn't be like, "Oh, I made a new strategy," or I like changed the color on my website, or I like spent hours designing stuff in Canva and I never put them anywhere. Like all the things, all the busy work that we so easily can get like sucked into. This had to be somebody else is involved. Like it could be I reached out and I made a connection, or I actually like had a coffee networking call with somebody that I'd met through an event or whatnot. Or I like talked to somebody on Instagram instead of just posting on Instagram. So these little tweaks became the core of taking visibility actions. And since then, I've been able to kind of reflect back, right? And I look at it like taking like the visibility challenge. First of all, you need a solid 90 days to really build up some significant momentum. And then probably after that, it's just gonna become so easy. It's just who you are now. It's just what you do. You like it's part of a habit, right? A lot of us, I'm sure, have read Atomic Habits and
Oh
everything
yeah.
out there about
Oh,
like
thank
habit
you.
building. Have you
Mhm.
read it?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
really good.
right? And everything out there that they say about habit building is it takes at least 60 days, right, to like build a habit. And so visibility needs to be a habit as part of your business growth. It needs to be something that you're doing regularly. It doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't mean you have to get on a podcast every day for 90 days, right? Because that can be a lot. But it means that you have to, like, make some connections, create new relationships, start putting more ripples into the water, like, I don't know, there's so many analogies that we can use when it comes to visibility, but ultimately, I've now, like, reflecting back on it and seeing what kind of actions I've taken, and so I know what all of those are, and I know how to help people figure out which ones are going to be the most effective for them based on the type of business that you have, the type of visibility that you actually enjoy doing, because people will be like, I'm not writing a press release. I don't want to be featured in the media. Like, that's not everybody's game, and that's okay, right? We everything works and also everything doesn't work. So you can customize it to you, and that's the important piece. I want everyone to know that. You need a customized visibility strategy because there's no such thing as, like, pulling something off a shelf. The cookie cutter plans, they just don't work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if, because I'm thinking like 10 minutes a day, I have to figure out what works for me. What is something that works for most people that they can do in 10 minutes a day? Because I'll be straight up with you. Like this lady over here, she can like pick out 15 minutes of her day, like back when the kids were taking naps and they were home all day. Me though, it just takes me like 10 minutes to get into a task. So like what is something that I could do in 10 minutes that's gonna move the needle, so to speak, for visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that is anything in the realm of connections, right? So, c everybody has, like, I guarantee you, you have something on your to-do list that you have been moving daily, weekly, maybe even for over a month that's been like, I need to connect with X person. It's a person that that you just need to send an email to about an opportunity. Maybe they're a former client, maybe they're a potential affiliate partner, maybe they're a potential sponsor. Something is there. And that those kinds of things make huge impact, right? Like making a connection. So if I can, maybe I'll go into like the explanation of kind of the layering technique when it
Yeah,
comes to
Yeah, let's do
visibility.
this.
please come
And then we
on.
can then we can expand a little bit on that connection piece because it's really important, but it's also not necessarily like the first thing because there is an order to things, right? Like if we're thinking about visibility, well, visibility for what? And this is these are the questions. These are the things that get people kind of stuck. Is like, well, what is it that I'm promoting? What is it that I'm talking about? How do I talk about that? What am I saying? So this is the first layer is the foundation. So this is your cake. We're now talking about cake, okay? Side story, I'm just like not a good baker at all. So this is not because I love baking cakes. In fact, I've had many a my child's birthday where I was in my kitchen until 11 p.m. the night before the birthday trying to bake a cake, swearing at my choices. Why? Why did I try to bake a cake? This is a terrible idea. So, I don't do that anymore. But
Hey, you're at least you tried. I don't even do that. I'm like store bought all the way.
For
I
sure.
feel you, and I am there, and that is what we do now, unless grandma wants to bake the cake, and then go for it because 'cause I'm not doing
Right.
it.
Costco cake for the win.
Yes,
At least
Yeah.
for
yes.
me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
With the
with
whipped
you.
frosting. The whipped frosting is where it's at, not that other
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm. I mean, and everybody this is why this is a good analogy too, because you get to pick your favorite kinda cake or ice cream sundae, Jamie, or whatever it is that you like, okay? And we're gonna, like, build the layers of it because there has to be a foundation. And so the first thing is setting up sort of your visibility assets. This is that base layer of the cake, if you don't have that, you can't just start with icing. I mean, that could be an argument we could have too, but essentially, if you want it to technically be a cake, you have to start with the first layer. So, what is your message? Who are you? What do you stand for? Why should people care? Building out some of your assets like your bio, your social media profiles, your presence online, and ensuring that all of that like clearly communicates the value. So when people start noticing you, there's something they're coming back to, right? And this is that ultimately we can talk about visibility in terms of like the tactics, but there's a piece here around brand. And to like be fully transparent, I've always talked about myself as a brand strategist, and I finally gave up on that because people didn't understand what that meant. So I am a brand strategist, but I'm also a visibility coach, but we're always going to talk branding. Like in anything I ever do with any of my clients, that's what it always comes back to. It's like, what's the mission? What's the vision? What are your values? How do we figure out your ideal client? All of that falls into brand. And that's the foundation layer of your visibility as well, because that needs to be set up, or else you're going to start going out and like, imagine trying to go on a podcast, but you don't know who you're talking to and you don't really know how to talk about it. So, first of all, that's going to make it really challenging for you to figure out what podcasts to pitch, because a good podcast fit is that my audience and your audience are the same,
Mhm.
Okay. All
right?
right.
So
I feel
this
like
is
I
where
can relate.
it all falls apart if you don't have the foundation. I'm just really trying to underscore that point.
Yeah. Must have that bottom layer of the cake.
Must have bottom layer. Second layer, the connection layer. So like, let's call this the filling. And in my Black Forest, my mom's favorite cake was Black Forest cake, and that's a chocolate cake. And then there's this yummy like cherry kind of filling in it. Delicious. And then another layer of chocolate cake. So we're talking the cherries right now. So this is your connection where you're building relationships, building awareness. And this is so powerful. And if people haven't leaned into the power of like connections and collaborations, this is your reminder to start doing that. And this is definitely something that you can start doing 10 minutes a day, like building, connecting, creating new relationships, showing up in people's online spaces, right? Like QUAY.jo and I, we met at an online event that happened before an in-person event that we went to, right? And then we connected and had a quick chat, and then we booked podcast interviews with each other. So there's 3 podcasts going out into the world as a result of that. And now I am always checking out your Instagram. I'm following your podcast. Like we're staying connected, right? And those are the things that take less than 10 minutes a day. It doesn't take 10 minutes to make a podcast interview. It takes 10 minutes to reach out about setting it up. So just to clarify.
Okay. All right.
So these are the things like networking, right? Forming connections with other people, like asking. So now I know you, QUAY.jo. I can see who else has been on your podcast. And if I'm interested in meeting any of them, I will ask you for an introduction. Like taking those kinds of steps. This is building those collaborations, partnerships, and that's how you get in front of other people's audiences too. So
The
really
real
visibility
people.
is about people, right?
Real people.
Real people, exactly. And this is where like the whole idea of not focusing on social media. So I'm definitely a big like visibility without relying on social media. And social media meaning posting on social media. You can use social media to connect with people. I love it for that. Right? But if we're always thinking, "What do I post? What do I post? I hope somebody sees it." Why wouldn't you just send somebody a message? Because they will see it.
There you go.
Is it true?
Yeah, yeah.
This is true.
Right? Like, so maybe you're zoning in a smaller, quote, audience, right? By reaching out to one person. But when you can create those conversations, like that helps. That's what you build upon to expand, which is what ties nicely into the next layer, which is amplification. So this is where you're starting to think strategic. Yeah, strategic platforms,
I'm just going
other
over in my
people's
head.
audience,
Foundation,
foundation,
connections,
connection,
amplification,
amplification. Yeah,
strategic
I wish it spelled something cool. It's FCAM. It's
FCAM.
doesn't sound like no one's gonna remember that. So
No.
we're talking cake. So like there's some more substance here, right? It helps. This cake is now a little bit fancier. Like you can eat a cake with one layer, but like a double layered cake is just better. There's a filling, it just tastes better, right?
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we're looking at things like guest speaking opportunities, podcasts, interviews, media features, even maybe contributing content to other platforms, collaborating with larger audiences. And if you like writing, maybe it's guest blogging or writing articles for user generated content kind of publications, getting in front of other people's communities, really. This is where you get collaborations to amplify your visibility, and it helps you to expand your reach because you're showing up in places where your ideal clients already are and already trust the source, right? It's that whole idea of of trust by extension. Because I am here and the people who trust you are listening, I automatically come in at a higher level of trust than if they just find me on the explore feed on Instagram, for example.
So what's the M?
Momentum. So this is your icing because also on the Black Forest cake we were looking at pictures and now I have to go buy one. There's like there's cream.
I
So
know.
you got
You're looking at these
cream, but you
pictures too.
also could have chocolate flakes and sprinkles. You could also have cherries on top. Like this is where we're decorating. Fancy people make cakes with fondant and all kinds of layers and stuff. So ultimately, once you have those three things in place, then it's a habit. This is where the momentum builds. Like everything starts stacking up. And it's amazing to just actually like take that example of how I started this whole process for myself over a year ago. Things are now happening way faster. Like recently, I landed 5 speaking opportunities in one day,
Whoa.
but that's
Whoa.
because
That was a good day.
it was a great day. This was one of them. This was one of them that happened that day. I did a podcast episode on my show about it actually, if people want to listen. But essentially, that's because of the ongoing little things that have been happening over the course of time, right? Like, I will never say that all of a sudden just 5 things happened. They did magically kind of come together, but the reason I'm on this show, and I love playing this game too, it's so fun, is like, if I never did X, then I never would have had this happen, right? So how do I trace this back? Well, I'm here because we went to Make Your Mark Live. And I was only at Make Your Mark Live because a year ago I bought a ticket to Make Your Mark Live. So that's like a whole year in the making. And we didn't even know that was going to happen. And I think that's also really exciting and that people can lean into that as like what could be the next big thing? Because it could be just a little thing that becomes the next big thing. Like who knows who's going to listen to me on this podcast episode and where that's going to go, which is awesome. To me, I think it's so great. It's like everything could be the next big thing instead of being like, well, I have to like do this big, crazy, complicated visibility, like tour of all these podcasts and I need to get on Good Morning America or something in order to get where I want to go. And it's just really not true. You have opportunities for thought leadership, showing up as an expert in these smaller platforms and like let it expand and let the opportunities continue to stack. That's where the momentum comes in. And that's the fun part. That really can start happening. It can happen so soon, really. But ultimately I would say watch yourself after you start implementing visibility intentionally for 90 days. See what happens. The results are amazing, and then you'll just I don't know, I guess I'm addicted to it now in a good way because it is a revenue generating activity. It is something that you have to do in order to grow your business, and so keep doing it, but it's no longer as challenging, it's not intimidating. You start expanding into new areas once you've built this up as a habit and it becomes you get into that momentum space.
I
Mhm.
like it. I like it.
Yeah, that's great. I think we, as you know, for those of us that work from home, right? Everyone has their home office, especially like post pandemic now. It's a very common thing. And it's like we're kind of just all in our little offices at home and behind our computer screens and or behind our phone screens. And it's almost like, yeah, you can put a post out there, but like, who are we really connecting with? And so I think that's super important, especially now, to make sure we're connecting with real people. So I think like the key takeaway here is take those actionable steps to connect with real people
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing. So I like that.
Where can somebody hear more from you or find out more about you, Kelly?
Yes, please come hang out with me on Entrepreneur School on the podcast. There's probably 100 episodes about visibility on there, specifically if that's something that you want to chat about, because that is what I focus on helping people with, is coming up with that custom visibility strategy and then implementing it and building the habit around it and helping you do it even when you don't want to, even on the days that it feels hard, because there's like levels of things. Like there's things that are hard, like pitching yourself for a podcast or trying to get on, like trying to get an award, like apply for an award or something. You just have days where you just don't feel that like doing that. But you can definitely reach out to like a friend who you met somewhere. Like, hey, we were talking about doing that thing together. Let's like have a virtual coffee and set that up, right? Like figure that out. So my website is ksco.ca, and all the information about Brand Visibility Accelerator and how I work with people is all there, along with some great free resources to get you started with your visibility as well.